from all, he came out and said, this is disturbing reporting. We need more answers. We need that investigation to take place in a meaningful and substantive way so that the U.S. can be on the right side of history, as Alex.
Hello, Anne.
Hello, Jean. How are you?
Good. Good.
I'm so glad to be able to come to see them.
I think you'll enjoy it. This session and the one we have on the first of the month with the artist, the abstract artist.
Do you do this every time, every first of the month of all different ones?
Yeah, this one is usually, this is called the Getting to Know series, and this is about individual artists, kind of like an art history discussion.
That's good.
And on the first week of the month, same time, same day, Wednesdays at 4, we have a meeting of abstract painters, or I should say artists, because there's some fabric people in there too. And even if you don't have any pieces in, it's just a great conversation.
Well,
You
we're
get to
allowed.
see some really nice work, and you have some really, it's just good community for artists.
You know, I really am. I have never shown my pieces. And if this is a way of showing it and getting some interest in it to critique it, that would be good for me.
I think it'd be perfect for you. Yeah, that's what we do. We do some critique, and it's very well done. It really is.
Are we supposed to put our let's see, share screen or not?
Nope.
Nope. Good. Okay. I see people up on top, but I'm not going to do that, right?
No, you just want to turn on your video. That's all.
Let's see, video.
Hey, Joe, looks like we have the same haircut.
Stuart, yes, we do. We're brothers of the Pate.
Oh, are we? Yes, we are.
How you been?
Good. Yourself?
Good. Hanging in there.
Good, good. Is that a piece of your own behind you?
Nope, that's a Clyfford Still piece.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't even afford a print, so.
Got a screen share.
Yeah, exactly.
How many are joining you today?
Hard to tell. Sometimes we have anywhere from, I don't know, we've had a high water mark of 30. We've had as many as, somewhere usually around the like high teens, low 20s, something like that.
Hello.
Hi, Sandy.
Hi.
Sandy, how are you?
I'm good. Good. I guess I'm good.
Cassie, welcome. How you doing?
I'm good.
Good. This should be an interesting discussion today. I found some pretty good videos on Clyfford Still.
I always have to cut out a little bit early because I have another meeting at 5, and they
That's
won't.
okay. That's okay. In fact, last week I think we were done. Or the last time we were done like at 10 past 5. What didn't go much beyond 5.
Joe, I think I sent you an invitation to our performance this Saturday. Did you get an email?
I think I did. I got something from you to do it.
Yeah, we're doing Under Milkwood.
Yeah, the Dylan Thomas reading.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to read his Christmas story to my kids when they were young.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah. Here comes Mary.
Yeah.
Hello, Mary.
There she is.
Hi, Stuart.
Hi, Mary.
And
You look cold, Mary.
well, I took a walk on the beach and I had my doors open and I was in a Columbia University fiction class, which I left to come to your workshop. And so I couldn't deal with closing doors and getting warm, but pretty soon I'll take off my coat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've been freezing all day. It's so cold in my place.
Ah.
If I step outside, it feels nice, but if I'm
Yeah, the
inside,
last,
I'm
the last
freezing.
few days, I have to admit, it was pretty chilly, especially early. I'm up early and 5 o'clock in the morning, man. I'm walking around the house with a wool hat on
Yeah, the same thing
for
happens
obvious
here.
reasons. Okay.
I was just gonna say the same thing happens here where the house, it's like 70 degrees outside, but the house stays cold.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Chris.
Hi,
Hey,
Kathy.
Chris.
Hi, Joe.
I'm glad I can see people, but you can see me because it's showing me that you can't see me.
No,
we
turn on your
can't see you,
camera.
Joe, but we can hear you.
Gotta turn on your camera, Joe.
Because I thought maybe you could just see my name. So I'm glad I can see all of you and the wild Clifford Still behind Joe.
Yeah, it's an
Hi, Joe.
original. I had, I finally broke the bank and bought one last week.
Well, you got one for me too, right?
Oh yeah, it's on the other side of the house.
Otherwise, hello, everyone.
Hi, Jill.
Hi,
Oh,
Jill.
Hi.
Hi.
I see Lynn joined us. Hi, Lynn.
Hi.
And here comes Veronica.
Hello.
Hi,
Hi,
Veronica.
Veronica. And there's Janet.
Here I am.
There you are.
Oh no, somehow I lost you.
We can still hear you,
There.
Jill.
Yeah.
Good, I got you back. Thank you.
And here comes Judy Dernberg.
Hey,
Hello, Judy.
hello, Joe. I'm trying to get the screen big. Here I go. Now I got it. Now I'm up there. Good.
Yeah, we'll give it a couple more minutes.
Okay.
It's sometimes a late arriving crowd. There's Polly.
Remember what everybody said in class? The people arrive early or the people that live far away.
Yeah, that's true. But it's not so true anymore because, geography doesn't mean anything anymore.
Yeah,
And there's Sandy.
that's right. I cannot sign on into that class.
Hey,
Oh,
Judy.
Hey, finally, I figured it out.
There you
Okay.
go. Here comes Marilyn.
I see some
Hello.
familiar faces.
Hi, Marilyn.
Hi, Joe. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Yeah, I'll get started about 4:05.
Okay.
Found some interesting videos this week on Clyfford Still, and there's actually quite a bit out there. One is and this will be the last one I show. It's an interesting look at a part of his process that I know I never knew this, and Jill might have seen it maybe, but it's interesting.
Okay.
So I've got 4 videos, but they're all fairly short. There's one's 4 minutes, one's 2 minutes and 30 seconds, one's a little over 6, and another one's a little over 6. But, and I was trying to pare it down, and I said, you know, each one has an interesting take.
Good, good.
Will be exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, the first one is from Sotheby's. The second one is from the Clyfford Still Museum in Denver. The third one is actually part of an art history class, but it covered some things that I thought were pretty interesting. And then the last one is the one on a piece of his process that I found particularly interesting.
By the way, Joe, I'm reading that book that you recommended, Ninth Street Women,
Oh, yeah.
you know, about the abstract expressionists, the women.
Yeah.
It's really good. I mean, you're right, it's long, not 900 pages, but.
Oh, yeah. You have to take it in chunks, I think. Almost.
Okay, mute my, so if there's not a red dash through it, it's okay?
Yeah.
They can hear you now, Mom.
Okay, can you hear me, Stuart?
Yep.
Yep, we can hear you.
It's Ann Mitzenmacher.
Hi,
Hello, my friend, how are you?
good. How are you?
Yeah. I haven't seen you since when?
A long time ago, years. It's been years.
You were in Jill's class, right?
Yep.
Well, I'm painting better, and I'll tell you why. I had brain surgery,
Oh, wow.
and it did something nice.
Yeah, it sounds that way. How
Be
nice.
sure to tell your doctor.
Never let it be said that everything is negative.
Yeah, really. My
I
goodness.
love it when a plan comes together.
It's so true. Oh, let's get you back on.
It's a good thing when it all comes together when it's surgery.
You know
Yeah.
what? It's delightful.
All right. So I think we'll get started. It's 4:06. And I'm going to share my screen. I think everyone here knows something about Clyfford Still. He started out on the East Coast and wound up on the West Coast. Was very influential in the early abstract expressionist movement and had a lot to do with influencing the West Coast abstract expressionist movement. People like, yeah, his name just escaped me. Begins with an R.
Rothko? Are you thinking of Rothko or?
No.
Rauschenberg?
No,
Mm.
maybe it's not an R. Anyhow, it'll come to me.
You're
Famous
our
man.
age.
So I think without further ado, I'm going to put on the video.
Okay.
I think this painting has a lot of drama in it. You have these jagged, angular forms, these kind of crags. You have different areas of flatness, of impasto, of sheen, of matte quality, and of course that crimson that just punctuates the canvas at all the right points. What Still is able to achieve is a kind of interlocking of form, so that unlike Jackson Pollock and his drip paintings, you feel a sense of control in his work, and that every stroke means something, that there's nothing extraneous on the surface of the canvas. Clyfford Still's 1947-Y #1 was painted from a very formative period of the artist's career. From 1946 to 1950, Still was teaching at the California School of Fine Arts in San Francisco. And it was during this period that he created some of his most defining and really exceptional works of art. This particular painting embodies everything that Still stood for as an artist. He was one of the founders of abstract expressionism. In the post-war years, he came to create a new style of painting that was based not on references to the real world, but on abstract forms. Still has said, it's intolerable to be stopped by the frame's edge. And I think there's this sense of infinity, of boundlessness, that helps us reach a kind of more transcendent state, akin to what Mark Rothko and Barnett Newman were trying to achieve in their art. And I think this particular painting embodies all the great chromatic intensity you want of Still. He often works on a white ground, sometimes raw canvas, but in this case there's a play between different shades of white from which these darker forms seem to emerge. There is his characteristic yellow, black, and that crimson red. When I see a Still painting, even though they're non-referential, I think of the earth. I feel like these jagged lines and cavernous openings and apertures are almost letting us look at a glimpse of what lies beneath the surface of the earth. We know this painting was important to Still because when he had one of his defining career retrospectives in 1959, he selected this work to be included. The work comes from the collection of Harry W. and Mary Margaret Anderson. There's a museum at Stanford University that houses a gift that they made to the museum of over 120 works from their collection. The majority of Still's work today rest in a few museum collections, so it's very rare for a work to come to market, and particularly one of this quality. This is a real opportunity to acquire a painting by Still that is really at the epitome of his achievement. It has all the hallmarks of the great style for which he's known.
Hey, let's all chip in. Maybe we can buy it.
I think this painting
Clyfford Still said, "Behind all my work lies the figure." And he meant this not only for the inherently representational images, but in his most abstract images as well. It's those elements that are energies, forces, feelings, all the things that are embodied with being alive that Still remarkably tried to depict in painting and drawing.
Even at the very start of his output, Still is dealing with abstract qualities of vertical and horizontal. And it's this absorption in the abstract, in the essences of what it means to stand and exist in space, which gives Clyfford Still a very early engagement with abstraction per se.
The idea that Still even picked up on later in his career and identified as almost a motif, that verticality expresses a kind of life force. When we are alive, we march through the world vertically. When we die, we become horizontal. Things grow vertically. When they die, they fall over. And so this idea of simple verticality is something that is universal about that force, those things that keep us upright.
He wrote, "These are not paintings in the usual sense. They are life and death merging in fearful union."
He often said, if you look at my paintings with unfettered eyes, you may find forces within yourself that you didn't know existed. He wanted people to respond and look within themselves. They were spiritual autobiographies, and he wanted them to be seen in totality because they all were of a fabric.
What is embodied in the Clyfford Still Museum is the idea of finding the artist's voice. And no longer do we have the artist himself to defend his work or to add meaning to it. It's now up to the museum to present those paintings in a way that the artist's voice comes through clearly.
Then we have Clyfford Still. Now, although not as widely known as some of his New York School contemporaries, Still was the first to break through to a new and radically abstract style devoid of obvious subject matter. His mature pictures will employ great fields of color to evoke the same dramatic conflicts between man and nature taking place on a monumental scale. He's basically using different imagery to come to the same conclusions that we see from Rothko. Of course, we have multiple artists working with the same idea in different ways. These are not paintings in the usual sense, he once said. They are life and death merged in a fearful union. They kindle a fire. Through them, I breathe again, holding a golden cord, finding my own revelation. A believer in art's moral value in a disorienting modern world, Still will go on to influence a second generation of color field artists, because there will be a second form. We will see what's called post-painterly abstraction take place, but not until later. Now, Still's overriding theme is the existential. Again, existential. We've been dealing with this since Lucian Freud and Francis Bacon. But his theme is the existential struggle of the human spirit against the forces of nature. A notion that finds expression in the vertical forms that reach defiantly through the majority of his compositions, and a struggle he evoked in his phrase, the vertical necessity of life. His expansive fields of color have sometimes been likened to caves or vast abysses momentarily illuminated by crackling flares of light. Sounds really good, but it basically means that because he uses vertical, sort of broken line, it looks like lightning. And so we compare it to lightning. Not everything in art history is nearly as complex as it sounds. Still's progression to purely abstract painting in the 1940s predated and influenced a similar move to non-representational art by his abstract expressionist contemporaries, and he is, of course, notoriously difficult to deal with. So let's deal with one of his paintings. This is 1944 N number 2. So he uses code for the title of his paintings. 1944, the year, N number 2, sort of a title, but again, it doesn't give us anything. It's non-representational. So this piece marks an essential turning point in Still's progression to completely non-representational painting. Along with its purely abstract subject matter, it also exhibits several other devices which he will use throughout his career. First, we have a dynamic relationship between vertical and horizontal form. So we see both vertical and horizontal. We see them related, both in shape and, in this case, in color. We see a predominantly dark palette highlighted by areas of bright color, really a common element in Still's work. We see a highly textured surface because he uses a palette knife to apply his paint. So you're going to get a texture known as an impasto, I-M-P-A-S-T-O, in the application of the paint. Finally, we see an adoption of a non-referential naming system composed of numbers and dates. So 1944 N number 2 is also notable as being one of the few replicas that he produces. Much like Dada art, he sometimes intentionally recreates the same piece. Although abstract expressionists will produce pictures in series, which were very similar in composition, their conception of the painterly act as an event, as an expression of emotion, discourages them from creating replicas. However, Still is trying to draw an idea out of the viewer, and to do that, you can have replicas and not have a problem, because the viewer will see something different every day, especially when we deal with color field, which gives us less concrete material to work with. Nevertheless, Still appears to have seen both the picture and its pair as identical in character and quality. So obviously they aren't perfectly identical, but they are identical enough if I didn't put them next to each other. If I showed you in a couple of different slides divided by 1 or 2, you wouldn't pick up on the differences. You would go, yeah, that's pretty much the same piece. And again, like Rothko, you're supposed to stand there, look at it, but you're getting a little more information. He's giving you form. He's giving you shape, unlike Rothko. Although it's this broad shape, this broad idea, it could be a crack, it could be lightning, it could be a void, or it could be something on the surface. It's really hard to tell. And we have that little blue mark in the lower right, which could draw your attention under certain circumstances. We have this dark, what looks like black, but maybe it's more of a black violet. Overall, over most of the canvas, punctuated by these little items. It could be a reflection of life when you look at it. You could see this as the boredom and sort of mundane aspects of life punctuated by the sheer terror or excitement of little things that happen throughout your day or maybe your week or month. Either way, it's again left entirely up to the viewer.
Drawing begins as soon you put mark on the paper. But after that, I don't want to define what drawing is.
I see drawing as a foundation where I sort of start my sculptures. So if I have an idea, it's my initial way of recording that idea.
What the importance of drawing is to us is that it's the foundation of visual language.
A lot of people hesitate to show drawings because they are procedural, but I only show drawings because I think the process is the most interesting thing that you can see when you look at an artist's work.
Anytime that you're given the opportunity to look at an artist's drawings as opposed to the thing that they're famous for, whether that's, the big massive paintings, is a special peak of who they are as an artist.
Clyfford Still's drawings had always been something of a mystery. We always knew the drawings were special. There's something about their intimate scale, the rarity. I had never seen a Clyfford Still drawing before visiting the warehouse. And so there was something revelatory about discovering these drawings and honestly being the first person on the planet to see them since the artist made them in a studio.
When we received the collection here, we went through every single box one by one and lifted every single piece of paper out, cross-checked it with Patricia's inventory. We ended up going through 1,600 that they had inventoried. And then slowly but surely we started finding little stacks in other boxes that we hadn't opened before. And these drawings weren't inventoried or documented. So the collection grew from 1,600 to over 2,300 works on paper.
One of the things I remember as we were cataloging the drawings collection, which was happening in tandem with some of the paintings as well, was the interrelationships we were starting to be able to discern, and particularly starting to realize that certain drawings either led directly to paintings or, even more surprising, drawings came out of extant works on canvas.
He would create studies for paintings, but he also worked backwards, and I think that really shows that drawing and working on paper was just as significant as painting was.
We have an instance in the exhibition where we have virtually the same image done on paper with oil paint and the same image done with pastel. And I think that raises all sorts of questions about why would he recreate that image in two different media. But it really does suggest the differences and variations that the drawing media can provide an artist.
Drawing is very important because the drawing really trains your eyes how to see.
It wasn't until the end of my undergraduate experience in school that I started to think of drawing in a broader sense, and that was amazing. For the first time, drawing had an emotional impact on me, that it wasn't just a reproduction of an object. Instead, it was infused with emotion or concept or meaning. Still was such a traditionalist. He started out making sketches and mastering media in the traditional sense that the old masters did. He worked in graphite and in figure drawing and landscape, and he had to master those traditional academic motifs before he could break the rules.
One of the most fascinating bodies of work in the drawings collection is represented in the over 100 oils on paper he made between 1943 and 1944 in Richmond, Virginia. We see repeatedly in these dozens and dozens of drawings a new art being invented, first on paper, but then in the later 40s, many of these same images get transferred to canvas, and together they really form the beginnings of what we call abstract expressionism.
I think formally there are similarities throughout his life in terms of what he was creating on paper the same time he was creating on canvas. So in the 50s, when he really started working predominantly in pastel on paper, we get the same sense of color and materiality that we get with his paintings. And likewise in the 70s, as he's moving on canvas to greater areas of void and empty space, we see that more in his pastel works as well.
The sheer size of Still's drawing output, again about 2,300 objects, in and of itself is a pretty interesting statistic. For a movement that we associate with spontaneity and a kind of creative impulse that can't be repeated, a kind of mythic idea of abstract expressionism, this many deliberate works on paper is pretty unique.
Looking at an artist's drawing can be very telling because I think that drawing is a very intimate medium. The ability to sort of see each recorded mark, I think, is very fascinating. It's sort of like a living archive of that person's movement for that amount of time that it took to make that drawing.
I seek out artist drawings. I can avoid an entire exhibition of artwork and focus on the one drawing in the show, because to me it's the closest you can get to their thought process. It's like reading a book while you can see the person typing it.
I think above all else, the drawings represent Still at his most basic, his most personal, and his most primary. And using Still's own words, they become a personal diary of his own world.
That was really good, Joe.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts?
Well, I had a question. It seemed to me they said oil on paper was a drawing, but oil on canvas was a painting. And why they made that differentiation in the video, I don't understand.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they discerned that the oil on paper work was like a study. Maybe, I don't know.
Well, or maybe, was it oil or oil paint, or maybe it was oil pastel?
Oh, okay, that could be.
That could be. They didn't really define that. I just presumed it was oil paint, but you're right, it could be oil pastel.
Yeah.
The thing that blew me away when I first saw this was the fact it's the first abstract expressionist painter that I've seen who actually did studies of his work before he did the final, not all of his work, but some of his work before he did the final piece. What's really incredible is doing a final piece and then doing a pastel of it later. That I don't understand that. I mean, that's, if he was here, I'd be like, Clifford, clue me in. I don't get this. But that was an interesting process.
I think it was fascinating towards the end where the comment was made that if you look at his work, and I was wondering when it was said if the speaker only meant Clyfford Still or his experience with other artists, but to get the true essence of the artist was to look at a drawing as opposed to a painting. And then you could see clearly down to the core of that artist being. I thought that was, it was a really wonderful concept. I don't know if that would hold true always, but I thought it was a wonderful concept.
Yeah, I can't say that I've seen drawings of, that Pollock has done, or I think I've seen some drawings that de Kooning did, but generally speaking, you just don't see that kind of stuff.
I wonder if it was a referencing to most drawings have detail and not all paintings have that much detail,
Yeah,
perhaps.
it could be, because I know that the
Or
drawings.
perhaps it,
Go ahead, Stu.
perhaps it was that most of us see the drawings as preliminaries to the paintings. They might be smaller, but the painting is larger. You know, their studies, their preparation. Whereas that artist was saying, no, you know, and I think the curator seemed to indicate Still went both ways. So for Still, it wasn't just a study to make a bigger thing called a painting.
It
I
was
just
so
wonder.
detailed, the drawings. Whereas the paintings are not, they're far less, at least they appear to be detailed.
Well, and he might have been curious after he did a painting just to see how it would look in other mediums.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, it's funny, you know, he may have actually been trying to understand some of his paintings that he had already completed by redoing them again. It's kind of, you know, because when you take a look at his body of work, he creates something. The other thing that was fascinating too is how he did replicas. I've never, you know, let's mention that, you know, the abstract expressionists never did that. They did series, but they never did replicas like that. And so I found that to be really interesting in terms of differentiating himself from the other abstract expressionists.
I loved his sense of layering that gave it kind of a sense of depth.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
You know, it's funny, as a painter, that's something I'm working and learning right now is layering, because visually I've always seen work and thought, oh, they put that down in one layer. And I'm learning and working now that my work is getting better because I'm learning how to layer the paint. Even with acrylic, I'm still layering paint using translucency to do that. And it makes the world of difference in terms of your output, in terms of quality of your output.
That's what I love about acrylic painting. I love the translucent quality.
Yeah. In some respects, it reminds me of watercolor.
And you can paint over it easier if you make a mistake.
I've done that.
We all have.
I've done a bunch of canvases this year that I ended up just gessoing over so I could reuse.
Amen.
Anything else you noticed about Still's work?
Yes, like
Judy, you just went on mute.
unmute. Okay, yeah. Well, he leaves a lot of white space in the background, a lot of negative space, which I find very interesting. It's something that I have difficulty doing. I have to fill up the whole paper or the whole canvas, whatever.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
if you really want to, I'm sorry.
I like that too, because that's what I do, right? I leave a lot of white space. So I was glad to see somebody who's a genius does it too.
Nothing like validation, right?
I think though, it was, am I supposed to be pressing something? Because I seem to keep speaking over people and I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
I thought it was good that they brought out what we were thinking of negative space in reference to the white, that a lot of the white is actually painted. And so it does appear to us, the viewers, at first glance that it's negative space. But like, look, for instance, around behind Joe right now, and you can see what we peripherally take as white can be off-white or titanium white or variations on white. And it makes it more fascinating, gives it more depth, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting because when I'm looking at his work, and I'm a big fan of Mark Rothko. And by the way, the R was Richard Diebenkorn. And I have a big volume of his retrospective sitting right in front of me. And it was like, duh. But it's almost like he does what Rothko's work seems to me seems to be horizontal in his rectangles and his color field work. And I see Still doing a similar thing. I just realized this today, but only in a vertical sense. And he has more varied shape, perhaps. The other thing that I noticed about Still's work, Jill, close your ears on this one. A lot of art teachers will tell you, don't use black. Don't use black. And I think Still is a master of black.
I love black.
He really does.
Watercolor painting, watercolorists say don't use white. And I think those rules get in the way.
Mm-hmm.
They do. Of course they do.
And I'll bet you his blacks were not, he wasn't opening a tube of ivory black. He was mixing.
Well, you can see it behind you. Yeah, it's gray. There's different shades of black. But the one thing that I thought was over intellectualizing in one of the videos was talking about, well, vertical is life and horizontal is death. I mean, look at a tree. A tree has both horizontal and vertical.
Mm-hmm.
Lily pads or snakes in the grass. So I don't know where that guy got that from, but I thought that was a little overdone.
Maybe he was waxing poetic.
Intellectually.
I think you have to consider the moment that they lived in. In other words, it was when existentialism was very popular, and they were reading Nietzsche and Camus, and their paintings became a reflection of their philosophy.
Yeah.
Well, but also Freud, Freud was also very popular in intellectual circles then. So, there are obviously different influences.
And Jung was popular back in the
Jung
40s,
too,
so
sure.
I mean, yeah.
But I think a lot of the artists of that time were looking at life as being absurd.
Mm-hmm.
Very Dada.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you hear me when I speak? It's Anne.
We can hear you better when you sing.
How did you know? Who's talking about that? How do you know? Anyway, I've come to love working on black canvases because I can layer warm and cool and cold colors on it, and it brings the black, says to me, bring me everything that lives. And black it's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have black gesso, or what do you use to blacken it with?
I don't.
What?
She buys black canvases.
I didn't think about that.
Oh, they're out there. I buy them as many as I can get.
Where do you get
And you
from?
can do your own too.
Go to Michael's.
Oh, I didn't even know that. Well, how would you do your own? Just black paint?
No,
black acrylic.
Oh, the black serves as my background.
Yeah.
But you can create a black background because I think it's Liquitex that sells a black gesso.
Yeah,
I use a lot of black in the backgrounds, and I use gesso to begin the painting, as the base.
I've never worked with a black background. I wonder what that would be like.
Colors are more vibrant.
Oh, it's for me, it's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Behind your head, the red, that deep red.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you have to be careful what colors you choose, because I did a painting in class, and I don't think you were there anymore. But you gave me a black canvas, and I used a violet, a dark purple, and it totally disappeared because the background was black. So you do have to be careful.
You have to be careful.
Obviously, what colors you use.
And you know me, I'm the vibrant. I use vibrant a lot in many of my paintings.
Mm-hmm.
But look how nice behind you, that the beige, the brown, and the gold.
Oh yeah,
it's beautiful.
The way he places reds and crimsons next to the blacks, I mean, in many of his paintings are just pretty dramatic.
Yeah, it's very stunning.
I think when you think of just the difference between white and black, the fact that black absorbs the light and the white reflects. So just think of that when you put it into a painting, how it affects the rest of the colors if the black is going to be absorbent,
Yeah.
particularly if it's a matte black as opposed to a semi or a
Mhm.
semi or a completely a gloss. So
Yeah.
it's a whole different sense of energy it sends out to us.
You know, I want to ask a question. I do so much of my painting horizontal because I haven't got much room in the house.
Mhm.
Is it different? How much difference is there when you do the same painting vertically? Does it look different in one way if it's the same painting?
Oh, I'll tell you, I mean, in fact, Dan, when you come to the abstract artist painting session, you'll see what we do. One of the things that we will do is rotate someone's painting. And you do get dramatic differences. In fact, Jill taught me this.
She did.
Dramatic differences when you rotate.
Yeah.
It looks, sometimes it can be, it looks totally different. And it's very surprising sometimes because you're painting something horizontally and then you like it, you think it's great, then you turn it on its side and you're just blown away. You're like, oh my God, that looks so much better. The composition falls better, everything happens. It does change.
You know, when
standing away from it from a distance and then having it turned in different directions is
she taught us that
lightning, because you see things you never would have seen if you hadn't been doing that.
I think it's a gift to be together with different people, because when we're alone and we turn our paintings, sometimes we think that we could possibly be imagining it looks better.
Yep.
But then when the collective is there and most of the people are in agreement, it's just amazing. And then people leave with their painting in a different direction.
Right.
That's very true. Because as the artist, you lay the painting out in the perspective that you believe is correct. And so you construct it that way. And your brain kind of burns into it and says, yeah, that's the way it should look. So you're right. You're turning it on its side. You go, yeah, I really like it the way I started, But so many times, either in class or, with the abstract artist group, I know some of my work has gotten much better when it's rotated, except when I put collage pieces in, because then it becomes nonsensical sometimes.
Wasn't it meant to be that way?
Yeah.
Getting
When you've got text kind of defines
Getting back
the
to
perspective.
am I muted? Can you hear me?
Speak up a little, Mary. You're very low.
Yeah.
Are you underwater, Mary? It sounds like it on my end.
Oh, you're muted now, Mary. There you go.
I thought it was interesting that Clyfford Steele's, whoever was talking about it, said he wanted to go beyond or outside the canvas. And when you look at some of his paintings, like there might be red at the bottom all the way down the canvas, and a sense that it was going beyond that. I thought that was rather interesting.
Yeah.
That must be a Capricorn thing, because that was my favorite one too. And our birthdays.
There we go. We're Capricorn. We're about to have birthdays.
That's right.
When is your abstract sermon?
The abstract discussion and presentation, it'll be the first Wednesday of the month, same time, same day, Wednesday at 4. And I'll do the same thing that I did here. I'll email out an invitation.
Okay.
A Zoom invitation. And if you don't get it by the day before, just drop me a note.
Okay.
And I'll make sure you get wired in there. It's a good group. It's a really good group of painters.
And is this out of your home, or are you going to be on location somewhere?
No, I'm in my home. That's the beauty.
I just wondered, it sounded like it was another genre, another level of this. Maybe I didn't hear it quite right.
No, it's different. It's just that in that group, in that meeting, abstract artists bring their paintings in. What they end up doing is they email me the work. The abstract artists they email me the images, and then I bring the images up during the show, during the meeting, and we discuss and feedback and that kind of thing.
And that's from the collective, Joe?
Yeah, the Abstract Artists Collective.
I say.
Yeah. Cassie, you've been awful quiet. What's your thoughts on Clyfford Still?
Well, I mean, I agree with a lot of what you've already said, but the thing that I'm kind of pondering is if abstract expressionism was the defining movement post-war, and then like pop art, you know, was the defining movement in the 60s. What's the defining movement now?
Good question.
Good question.
It would be interesting to do.
Anything goes.
I
Yeah,
would like
Polly's
to.
right. Anything goes.
Yeah,
would-
anything goes.
Well, it would be interesting to like look at a contemporary artist and what the art scene is now.
Sure.
Yeah, especially this year.
I'm
Yeah.
taking a class from Rob Sherrill he's in Sierra Madre, and he loves art history, and he's a really great artist. And when people ask him that question, he said, there isn't one now. There are so many.
Okay.
Well, maybe that is what defines art now. Like, I'm not really sure that we can see it now. I wonder,
It's
like,
true.
I wonder like if the abstract expressionists, if they could see the big picture at the time, you know, or if it's just looking back that you can see it.
And
Maybe
is it
maybe
necessary is it necessary for an abstract painter to have something in mind, or can he just go ahead and put it on canvas and see something in it?
To me, I think Rauschenberg blew everything up. When you look at Rauschenberg's work, I mean, the assemblages he's done, cardboard box work. I've got a bunch of boxes in my garage right now. I'm saving because I have an assemblage in mind. His collage work, his painting, he kind of embodied what's going on today in working in an abstract manner, but in many different types of genres, including performance art, for God's sake.
Yeah. That was the comment I was going to make, is that it's not so much as what the movement is what's the material.
Yeah.
I mean, just in the last 20 years, if we think about how many different media have been presented and used and combined, and that doesn't even include digital.
That's true.
So how do you narrow it down to one way of thinking when you've got a million ways to say something?
It's called freedom.
There
Yeah.
you go. You and Richie Havens.
I think protest is part of the current movement too. A lot of the art is angry protest art. And of course, a lot is light, right? Using lights and using neon and computer driven light ensembles or pieces, I think is really part of the current scene.
Graffiti art is pretty popular now too.
Yeah, well, that's
Yeah.
part of the protest art I meant. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
Not really all
I
protest.
think I remember one of Jill's paintings that she showed us, a very large piece that she used a lot of metallic paint in it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was outstanding. And it was very exciting to see.
Yeah, but you mentioned graffiti art, and Jean-Michel Basquiat. I mean, back in the 90s, his work he was incredible. That's a sad story that he died so young.
That reminds me.
Is Jean-Michel Basquiat?
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah.
You'd recognize his work and go, aha, that's what the person's name was. You may not, if you have the spelling, you should definitely look that up.
By the way, that reminds me, there's a show coming up on HBO called Painting with John. I don't know if you're familiar with John Lurie, but he's a contemporary artist, and he was a contemporary of Basquiat, and he's a very existential guy, very, very kind of weird guy. And I think you would really enjoy it because his paintings are, they tell a story. You've got to read the title of each painting because that's very important.
Is
So
that L-U?
Lurie, and it's called Painting with John on HBO on December 22nd.
Is it J-O-H or J-O-N?
John.
Okay, I put it in the chat. I'm gonna put in Jean Michel's name too.
It was when Anthony Bourdain died of suicide. It was one of John Lurie's paintings that he had bought just 2 weeks prior, and it's very dark, and you can almost see.
Oh, that's where I've heard the name before. That's
yes,
right.
you could see into Bourdain's mind. Yes.
Mhm.
A lot of people think he didn't take his life though, so I'm kind
No,
of
he OD'd.
questioning that.
Yeah, exactly. He OD'd, whether he was intentional or not.
So is that HBO or HBO Max? Do you know?
Good question. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I
Max.
think it's just HBO.
Yeah, Max covers everything because if you've got it, because I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how that works anymore, but I know I've got HBO Max and that covers the whole.
Yeah.
But before you watch it, go to Google Images and look at his paintings. They're they're striking. They're really different, and I love
the
them.
other thing in terms of Clyfford Still. There's a big documentary, a 90-minute documentary that I watched. I think it's called Lifeline. That's about Still and Still's life in a lot of detail.
Yeah.
Did you find
Can you
that
put the
on
date on the chat?
particular venue?
I think Lifeline I found on Amazon Prime.
Oh, okay, I have that.
Check that out. I also found, it was on Amazon Prime, was Robert Motherwell.
Ah.
He's got a great, he'll be coming up in a couple of more months. I'm going to be bringing Motherwell forward. But yeah, and
Joe, you didn't put the last name of the author of the artist for that HBO show.
Oh, okay.
Just said John.
Yeah, that's the name
Lurie.
Lurie.
Okay.
Yeah, the name of the show is Painting with John, but it's John Lurie.
Oh, Painting with John is the name of the show. Okay.
Yeah. But the artist is John Lurie.
Got it.
And I mean,
And what was the date again?
December 22nd.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Next week. Next
And the
Tuesday.
time?
Gosh,
No,
that's
give
hard
a
to
time.
believe. It is next Tuesday. Holy
Yeah.
Toledo.
Yeah, I know. Time flies when you're having fun.
And when you're in love.
That's also true.
Going back to some of the art movements, the other thing is, somebody mentioned, I think Sandy, graffiti. Every subway car in New York City, totally covered inside and out with, and some of it was just ugly, but a lot of it was very, very artistic. It was, of course, moving art, because you look up at an elevated subway train and there's this art, rumbling by.
And I think some of it is messages about where to get drugs and stuff like that.
Well, there's a difference between like gang graffiti and the graffiti that is a little bit artistic.
Yeah.
There's a difference. Those are where you see the signals.
I never thought of it like that though. Like where to get drugs. It could be a secret foreign language. Only they know.
Well,
I never thought of it that way.
And a lot of that stuff gets changed into urban myth. Okay. So for instance, I noticed driving down the street right in front of my house, somebody threw a pair of sneakers over a telephone wire that's hanging down the middle of the street. Well, supposedly that was used originally a sign of, drugs are dealt here.
Right.
Oh.
And then it became, fashionable. So then, of course, it became, people said that, but it wasn't necessarily true anymore. So,
yeah.
I didn't know that that's what that meant.
Originally,
When I-
supposedly, New York.
Did.
I'll say how things change. When I was a kid, if somebody threw their sneakers over a wire, it was just to pick on them.
A prank, yeah.
Yeah, it was just bullying for a long
Exactly.
time ago.
Where did you grow up, Joe?
I grew up in Providence, Rhode Island.
Oh.
I'm an East Coast.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know,
I think
you sounded today more East Coast than I'd ever heard your voice, Joe.
I think it's because I've been shut in so long.
It's not,
Gonna revert.
not a bad thing.
No, it's the
Just
two.
send
I,
you one, excuse me,
It's a wonder. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
to send you
Yeah.
a painting for the abstract on the 1st. Do I just take a picture?
email me like you just did, Ann.
All
Today.
right.
Same
All right.
address.
Okay, thank you. I
Absolutely same
appreciate it.
address. You know, you talk about protest art. I mean, we covered Mark Bradford. You know, he's a modern day painter, and a lot of his work is protest work. You know,
Yeah, from the Watts area. He had a
Yeah.
lot of that in his background.
a lot of civil rights stuff, and you know, and he's actually it actually influenced what I think is one of my favorite paintings I've just done. He's gone out into the neighborhoods and taken down notices that people tack up on signboards and put those in his paintings. It's artwork. I'm totally down with Mark Bradford. I think he's a fantastic artist, certainly incredible. You know,
I don't know if you were in the class where we talked about that, because he was showing a lot of art online.
Mm-hmm.
And I missed his show. There was one in Santa Barbara. I totally missed it, not purposely. I would love to have seen it, but all those things that he would collect, like old posters or pieces of posters, he would glue string on the back or twine.
Mm-hmm.
And then when that dried, then he would sand over the front of it, and he would get the most fabulous, I don't even know how to describe it. I mean, you just see it in his work. It would wear some of the lower worn down areas, got less of a sanding, but
Mm-hmm.
those that had the string behind it would it take on whole new meaning than street signs. Just incredible.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And the thing that he said that inspired him, does anybody remember that, what he said? What inspired him? I mean, most artists aren't going to say, this is what inspired me, and then they tell a story like this. But does anybody remember that?
Absolutely. He worked in his mother's salon.
Uh-huh.
And one day he was rolling a perm in a woman's hair, and end papers fell on the floor, and he looked down at them and said, I think I could do something with that.
It was his complete epiphany. Don't you love it?
Yeah. He's also someone who went to Cal Arts at the age of 30, which I found incredible, because that kind of thing could be very intimidating for someone that age going into Cal Arts. But some of the other modern painters, like, you know, getting back to Cassie's question, we talked a little bit about some of them, like Cecily Brown is one. I don't know if Jill had us look at some Cecily Brown work. Jenny Seville is another one. And they're totally different pieces of work. They're paintings, but I can't say that they're the same, you know, or they're part of the school. You could make a case for some of the Berlin painters. Some of those, and I can't think of the guy's name, but he actually, it was in your class, Jill, that I got the idea, and I'm still working on them, of painting maps from an abstract perspective of where you were located.
It's a great idea. I can't think who that would be, though. Did we talk about him in class?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
I can't think who that would be.
He was a Berlin painter, and the one that impacted me was on the left-hand side. I think he'd taken his fingers and he drew like a grid up and down the left-hand side. I can't remember his name though.
Now none of us can sleep until we figure out who that is.
I still have the workbook. I may have to go back into that and dig them out.
Let us know. Send out an email, because
All right.
I can't think who that would be. And those are phenomenal artists. That whole Berlin school is just phenomenal.
Now a question.
Yeah.
Does an abstract painter have to have a perspective to paint?
I think there has to be some kind of intent. And what that could be, and that could be a very wide range, but I think that most great artists you can see there's some kind of intent. Whether it was to express an emotion or tell a story or, show a skill, there's some kind of, or a different perspective.
No, intent it's a good word. It's a good word.
I've said
And then
before that I'm being exposed to these things for the first time. And I notice I've looked in the last few minutes on Google at Motherwell and Lurie. And the thing about Clyfford Still is what I see is so exciting and positive, and I want to be there and I want to have it. Whereas with Lurie and with Motherwell, especially Motherwell, I want to run away. It repulses me. And with Cassie's paintings, I want to fall in. So I don't know what all that means, but I really like Clyfford Still now that I've seen him.
I think it's like reading a book. One person would like the book and you won't like the book. It's the same thing.
Yeah. It's the upward motion and the colors,
It also depends on what pieces you were looking at, because Motherwell did I think he did 190 pieces based on the Spanish Civil War, which were basically black and white with black image, like black forms on a white background. I'm not particularly taken by that work, but Jill had pointed out, and I went and looked, and he did some later work that was in color that was pretty interesting. But yeah, if you were looking at that black and white stuff,
it was globs of black. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know from Picasso that it depends what period I look at. Some periods I like, some periods I don't like. So, but it being expressionist, that's what it does for my emotions. It's interesting, and color means a lot.
Yeah, I'm just
looking at a lot of these
takes all kinds. I love Motherwell.
A lot of these artists that are considered, great were really they were really just breaking new ground.
That's right. Good point.
So and today it's very hard to break new ground, but when you do see something that's really different that you've never seen before, that I think that's really, really impressive.
But Kate, I think that argument has been made since time began. That, we're at the limit of knowledge. We're at the limit of expression. It's hard to break new ground. And then a genius comes along and does it.
Right.
And that's what makes him a genius.
Right.
It's like Brahms. People hated his work at first. He dies and they love it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Or a lot of the classical composers threw their music away because they thought it was trash, and somebody else pulled it out of the trash, and voila, they're put up on a pedestal. And if the artist had only known that at the time, it would have been so much very therapeutic for the artists themselves. My goodness. Like when you think of Van Gogh, although not an abstract expressionist, but when you think of him, that he would write letters and say, he wished that within his lifetime he could actually sell a painting. I mean, if he only knew now how he was just so loved.
Sure.
How did you like Copeland when he first wrote his music? It was harsh at the ear, and then it grew.
Well, look at John Cage.
Who?
John Cage.
Oh,
Yeah, people thought he was cuckoo.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Some people
and he
still
was
do,
such a
but-
good performer
Yeah.
along with
Yeah.
Rauschenberg's artwork and having that dance studio in Rauschenberg's, I'm not pronouncing this very well, within the same building, and they could combine all their arts together. That was pretty profound. Dance, painting, assemblage, music, all there.
Rauschenberg has become my new hero.
I got to know him actually, and that was really wild. Well, it wasn't wild in the sense what we think of wild now, but what I learned from him was the fact that everything was art. I don't know if I ever said this in class, but I remember he would say one day that he was going to go back to New York. Okay, then he says, I'm going to put a big pile of sand in such and such a room. I guess he was referring to, he had this boyfriend in his boyfriend's house, the pile of sand. And he said, I'm going to telepathically send messages to that sand and see if anybody knows what it means. Or I'm going to go call Janis Joplin and we're going to have a drinking contest. I mean, it was just like, and he meant all these things, it was like everything was available to him to draw his art from. And the two classic things about his actual painting, I think, is what he loved the most was when he had accidents with his artwork, where something spilled over in his studio in a closet and he didn't see that it had happened until it was too late, and he was furious because everything stuck together. But in the process, pulling it apart, that's where he got the image transfers, and that's what he got to be so well known from. And then his other favorite thing is when he put a painting outside to dry and he accidentally drove over it, and he loved the tire marks. I just think, you know what? Some people would have just trashed it all, but he loved that. It motivated him.
I saw his quarter-mile exhibit down at LACMA, and it just blew me away. Absolutely blew me away. The image transfer work was phenomenal. And as I walked around a corner and I saw his cardboard box assemblages, I was just totally taken by that. There was one where it was almost like a bridge that he had built, okay, with these boxes. Because he used to go out on the streets of New York and he would look for empty vegetable boxes. And he would look for a certain type, and then he would put them together and make an assemblage with them. And it was just phenomenal. I just, I've never seen anything like it. And it really worked. It was amazing. But yeah, the quarter
Yeah, and
mile.
I think during that time, if I remember correctly, I think he and Jasper Johns at time got so poor that they had to use a lot of things that they found. I think even at times, boy, I hope I am remembering this correctly, but I heard from one of them in a book that I think they were eating dog food, apparently, like minimally, because that's what it got down to, the true starving artists. So when you think of these profoundly fabulous, strong pieces from just finding things off the street or accepting mistakes and making them, it's that whole concept of wabi-sabi, the perfection of imperfection. That's what they really worked with.
Yeah.
It's fabulous.
And then he had these sculptures which were stacks of books. They're just glued together. They're like 5-6 feet tall, stacks of old library books. It was just, it really kind of opened me up to thinking, there's more to life than paint. There's other things that you can use, as an artist. Yeah, pretty phenomenal stuff. And and I can see from him his impact on the art world after that, with collage people and art painters and assemblage people. I mean, I think he just blew it up when he did his work.
Just immersed in art all the time.
Yeah. Oh, and I mean, I don't, the amount of pieces that he produced were phenomenal. I don't even have a count. In fact, I just got his retrospective that I'm going to be reading through. It's quite large. And, but yeah, good stuff.
I'd love to hear more about what's behind you as well. Speaking of large, I mean, is that, I can't tell, but the still, is it something that you painted in the fashion of his, or is it an enlargement of one of his paintings? I can't quite tell.
It's a cheap trick of virtual backgrounds.
Really?
It's an image of his that I use as a background because my space behind me is disgusting.
And I thought you were a great collector.
Yeah, thanks, Polly.
The only thing that's kind of a giveaway about that, isn't really because of the background, but when you move your head.
Oh yeah.
And you get this outline that kind of morphs into the painting of your head.
Yeah.
So
if I wanted to spend the time, I have a green screen. It's just a pain in the butt to put it up. And if I did that, you wouldn't see that. But I was like, nah.
I kind of like it. It's real Francis Bacon territory.
Yeah, it kind of is.
You kind of just blend into it like you mold into part of the painting. And I like that.
Francis Bacon and Lucian Freud. Oof.
Talk about a
new movement. You could start a Zoom movement.
There you go.
A Zoom art movement. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
With just screen grabs of people, just staring
half
at
their head, half their head gone.
Yeah, that's.
Sounds like the Philadelphia experiment. Remember that? That's kind of what people were supposed to have melted into the deck of that.
But that would create a whole new art rage, Kate.
You could say that again. Now, Jean was coming to these meetings. Remember Jean from class? And she's such a good painter. Have we seen her lately?
I have not.
Because she was so excited to be in your group, Joe, and with everybody here. She was just so happy. I'll have to write her and remind her.
Yeah.
Really, it was just perfect for her situation right now, what really fed her soul.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't seen her, but yeah. Right now I've got about 45 people on that email list, and obviously only 15 showed up, but that's kind of par for the course.
Which is good.
I just wonder if this is the best time of day and the best day of the week, but
it is.
I just don't know what else would be better.
Good for
Her
me.
Majesty Anne declares it is.
Let's get that on all the 2020 calendars.
Stuart, do we dare tell him how old I am to have started this wonderful paint? Kids.
Oh, I'm not going to tell it. That's your secret.
My secret is going to be told right now. 88.
That's a good number.
That's a
nice
good
and
number.
round. In Chinese numerology, it's very auspicious.
I love it.
I'd love to be able to get there.
Oh, you believe me, you can.
Yeah.
You know what my motto is if you want to get there? If you can forgive, then you can love, and then you can laugh.
There you
That's
go.
it.
Nice.
Very good. And you really mean it too.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
I will leave you. I thank you, Joe, for allowing me to become part of the class.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Like I've said this before, but this is kind of like my mission. I want to build community of artists, and yeah, I'm more than glad to do it.
Thank you.
Janet knows how zoomed out I've been lately,
Yeah.
but
Zoomed out.
this makes it all worthwhile. I just love seeing everybody and having the conversations and thoughtful, discussions. both this meeting and the abstract painters meeting. It's been great. It's been really
Thank you. And to everybody up there, see you next week.
I'm
not
gonna.
next week. Not next week.
Friday.
What
See you
day?
see you the first. I think it's January. The next meeting is January 6th.
6th. That's the one.
January 6th.
Oh,
Everybody
Mary and I
have a
will
great
be
holiday.
older by then.
Yeah, that's right. You will.
Goodbye. Take care. Be safe.
Everybody have a great holiday.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you.
Happy
New Year.
I
Happy
gotta
New
make
Year.
sure I know
Stay
how to
safe.
do this. Leave meeting.